The minutes that Cassie had sent. Good evening. Welcome to the May 16th DAC meeting, their last DAC meeting of the school year. I have the minutes in my hand, not the agenda. Okay, first thing we have is approval of the minutes. And as I said before the recording came on, make sure you have the revised minutes from out in the hall. And if there's no changes, I'll accept a motion to approve.
So moved.
No, you have to make the motion. Okay, motion made by Scott Hertz. And a second? Seconded by Dante. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion has carried. Is there any public comment from non-DAC members about agenda items? No? Okay. Then we will move on to our board update from Ms. Mary Fisher.
Thank you, Cindy. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. We want to get more people coming, so tell your friends about it so that next school year we can have a big attendance. I just have a couple of things to share with you, and that is that last evening, the Political Action Committee, who is advocating for the sales tax, hosted a reception, and it was well attended, and I think they raised like $32,000 for the marketing in just a oh, okay. So $50,000 for the marketing and the advertising that's to come. And we really appreciate the support of our business community. I've had the opportunity again this year to be involved with the Student Advisory Committee, and we had our last meeting last Wednesday, and I wanted to share with you some of the items, accomplishments, and recommendations from the student board. It consists of students from all the middle and high schools, and they have been amazing in being articulate about identifying issues and concerns and about praising their schools for the good work that they're doing, and they represent the district incredibly well. Right, Dr. Atkins? Yeah, they're amazing. So this year they accomplished increasing student involvement in schools. And they said they've been able to communicate more with their principals and staff and other students about school problems. They're really good at identifying what they need and sharing that with us, and that's been very helpful. They now have silent reporting for mental health issues, drug issues, and bullying. They feel like they've been instrumental in identifying some of the school safety improvements that are needed. And they've identified that there's a gender gap in the dress code and that there's a need for consistency district-wide. So they're recommending to the board consistency across the district with the code of conduct, enforcement, and contents. For school safety, they want to recommend that we do mental health surveys, have more school counselors, that we also address social media usage the appropriateness and imposing restrictions where necessary. They have requested that we give them some information on voter registration and the process before the Board of Elections goes to their schools to register them to vote. They're also proposing that they get to do evaluations on their teachers. They also think that one standardized test, FSA or EOC, should not determine pass or fail. And they look forward to, for the middle schoolers, to having orientation programs to give them an idea of what to expect when they get to high school. So they've done a great job this year. Our attendance was awesome. Almost everybody was there every time. And I found it very encouraging. I feel like we're in good hands for the future. The other good news is that our Student Services Department, Dr. Bohatch, sent out a report regarding our out-of-school suspensions. As you may know, over the years, we've made some adjustments to the Code of Conduct, and we are doing some interventions and positive behavior reinforcement. So where 6.73 of the students were out of school suspended in 2012-13, it has diminished now so that for last year, 2016-17, it was 4.67%. And the first quarter of this, quarter 1 to quarter 3 of this year, 2017-18, it's only 3.11%. So that's been very successful. As we continue planning, we're going to be looking forward to 2030, and I know that Dr. Atkins probably will be addressing that in what he has to share this evening, so I'm going to turn it over to him, and thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mary. And you've heard me say this before, but I'm going to say it again. You are represented by an awesome school board, and I'm absolutely humbled to be able to serve with them as a governance team, because you know, the thing about elected officials, to pick on elected officials, is there's all kinds of crazy motivations why people run for office, but this board ran for office to do what's in the best interest of kids, and it shows up day in and day out in their decision making. You know, I've worked in the district for such a long period of time, and served under many, many different boards. And you've got good boards and not so good boards, but this one is a great board. And so it just makes this job so much better, so rewarding, because you really feel like you're part of a team. And that's something that I can tell you I've never really felt one with the governance team of this school district until this particular school board. So thank you very much. I'm here to talk about, just give you an update in terms of our school year, kind of a little mini State of the Schools address. And I have to thank you know, Dr. Carlin, who's really done an outstanding job at helping me put this together, because as we were looking at the original draft of this, it just wasn't what I wanted it to be, because I really wanted to give you a pretty thorough update about what's going on in the school district, since you represent your buildings. And so I want to take the time to go through that, and some of it I'm going to need, you know, her help to give you all this great information. This was, I have to tell you, probably one of the most challenging years that I've ever faced in this profession, not just as a superintendent, but just as the profession as a whole. It also has been a very rewarding year, but it's also, as I said, been a very, very difficult year, a very challenging year. You know, we have seen tremendous successes, which some of those I'll share with you today. We also seen tremendous challenge, which, you know, you think back to Hurricane Irma is just probably the largest example. And we've also had to deal with tremendous tragedy. If you think about Parkland, and then even here in our own district with the death of some of our own, which happens all too often. And, you know, so I think that all of that, you know, as you reflect back on this year, it has been, again, a very challenging and difficult year, but there's also been tremendous success. So some of that I will share with you today. First, let's talk success. Academic success, goal one of our student achievement is to increase student achievement. This is the Vision 2020, our district strategic plan. Ken Savage is Florida's Principal of the Year. I think most of you knew that, but he was named our Principal of the Year. And of course, his assistant principal, Kelly Stedman, was named Assistant Principal of the Year for the state of Florida last year. Why? Because they took a school that was failing, and they, along with their tremendous teaching staff and support staff, moved that from an F to a B. But they weren't the only school that had tremendous success. You know, 4 years ago, there were 23 schools in differentiated accountability. You know, they were Fs and Ds, 23. This past year, 5. So it went down to 13, then 12, now 5. And we hope at the end of this year, I'm hoping for 0. So it's incredible transformational leaders like Dr. Savage or Ken Savage that makes all the difference, along with those teachers, because those principals, they bring those teachers in that truly make the difference in the classroom. All right. If you look at some other things that you may have heard me brag about before, because this is, again, the fantastic things that our teachers, our parents, and, of course, our kids is where the outcomes come in. We've had some remarkable accomplishments. The highest graduation rate in district history. The highest graduation rate in district history since those federal guidelines that, you know, leveled everybody went into play. Highest. It's a little over 78%. Over 88% if you just look at our high schools, our traditional high schools, factored charter schools out of the equation. Just look at, you know, Fort Myers High, South High, Estero High, Cypress Lake, Ida Baker, you know, North, you know, all of those schools. Highest we've ever seen. Also, we closed the achievement gap in graduation for our African American students by 5%. That's something we haven't done in a long time. And 1.3% for our Hispanic students. So not only highest graduation rate, but also closing some of those achievement gaps, which is very important. We increased student achievement in every single area, with the exception of social studies. In social studies, we stayed even. We didn't fall behind. We stayed the same as we did last year. Reading, writing, mathematics, science, all went up, every one of them. That's the first time in history we've seen the second highest jump in district history in terms of our ranking and our student achievement, but first time in district history that we've made progress in every single area without falling behind in any. You know, so that's something to be, you know, thankful for. And then also, as I mentioned, we jumped from 35th to 30th, which is, again, fantastic. So we did see remarkable student achievement this last year, but we're not satisfied with that because we want to be number 5 in the state of Florida. We want to be number 1 in terms of a mega district. Now, with that mega district, we are right in the mix of things right now. So, I mean, we're just a few percentage points off from distance, so a little bit more of a push, and we can be number 1 there. But we want it, but it's a little bit more difficult when you're competing against, you know, like the Space Coast and places like that. But we're going to be able to do this. All right. So let's talk a little bit about specific students, and this is where I need my notes. Our students continue to excel academically, and we don't talk a lot about that. Sometimes you look at the numbers and you're looking at averages, but what about the super high performance? Fort Myers High School junior Dahlia Dry won first place in the category award for mathematics and computational science and 3 special awards for her exoplanet candidate detection project. Okay. Exoplanet is a planet outside of our solar system, in case you were wondering. So, and if you haven't had an opportunity to visit science fair, man, these kids are just absolutely amazing. And speaking of that, I'd have to brag on the student Autumn. Autumn. Yeah. Autumn. Okay, Autumn is a 7th grader at Paul Lawrence Dunbar Middle School. My old alma mater was where I was principal, but she's a 7th grader. This kid as a 7th grader, I mean, pilot's license, all these awards and everything else. she's accomplished more by 7th grade than I've accomplished in my entire life. I mean, she makes me feel like a real slacker. 7th grader. She was our board advisory, student advisory to the board at our last board meeting, but just fantastic. And she's musically talented. I mean, just academically talented, musically talented, and just a nice kid. You know, just a nice kid. For the second year in a row, Mariner High School JROTC leadership team was one of the top 40 out of 1,329 teams in the world. In addition, North Fort Myers High School's mixed Raider team was named JROTC national champions for the second year in a row at the National Raider Challenge competition. And I don't know if you know this, but we have the largest JROTC program in the nation. Largest JROTC program in the nation. It's a fantastic program. Next, Adriana Macchia from North Fort Myers High School and Mary Brady from Cape Coral High School were selected as Sunshine State Scholars in 2018. This means that they're Lee County School District's top 11th grade students in the areas of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. That's fantastic. And then freshman student Kevin Demockley Lanigan, I probably butchered that, but he was named Florida State Champion in Microsoft Excel. Florida State Champion because of his exceptionally high score on the Microsoft Office Excel certification test at Dunbar High School's Academy for Technology Excellence. Kevin will now have the opportunity to compete this summer in Atlanta against the top qualifiers around the United States for the Certiport's 2018 Microsoft Specialist U.S. National Championship. And by the way, Dunbar High School is still the only Microsoft certified school in the world. Right here in Lee County, Dunbar High School. All right, let's talk about community engagement. You might have heard something a little bit about a half-penny sales tax. And I know we've talked to you all about that, so I won't go into that, but that is a huge initiative. And here's back to the school board. You know, coming out in Lee County and saying, all right, we're going to go out for a sales tax referendum takes courage, political courage, because that's not a very popular thing. And there's some pretty powerful people in this state that are not real happy with the fact that we're out there doing this. And many people, particularly if you're an elected official, would shy away from something like this. But this board understands that this is in the best interest of our kids. You know that U.S. World and News Report just reported that Fort Myers or Lee County is the #1 fastest growing area in the country just today. U.S. News and World Report, #1 in the nation. We have to be able to build schools, but you know that we don't have the dollars to do that. So they're out there taking it to the people, and they're out there with the Change to Change initiative, and she told you a little bit about that earlier, because we do have a $478 million gap. Other business partnerships. The Lee County Sheriff's Department, hats off to the Lee County Sheriff's Department. When they changed the law, the Lee County Sheriff's Department stepped up to the plate and said, you know what, don't worry, School District of Lee County, we got this. For the rest of the year, what they did, and you've heard me talk to you about this, but they've redeployed their deputies so that they have our schools, every one of our schools, covered to the end of the year. And just Monday, the city of Cape Coral, our largest city, unanimously decided to fund and to put SROs in all the city of Cape Coral school for next year. We had incredible support from the city manager, John Zerlag, and also the chief of police over there. So that just humbles me to know that here we got Sheriff Scott, we got the chief, the cities, and I'm meeting with Chief Diggs of the city of Fort Myers tomorrow. And Chief Diggs has really expressed an interest. He wants to get into our schools. So these are multi-million-dollar propositions because it costs $8 million to do this, and we need the help of our cities and municipalities. So that's very exciting. Something else that's exciting is the village of Estero. we are doing a signing ceremony. What day is that? Monday. So next Monday, we're going to sit down with the Village of Estero, and we're putting together the first time ever and a memorandum of understanding between the city or the village and the school district of Lee County. And that's to partner for the benefit of our students in and around the village of Estero. So that means getting volunteers. That means raising dollars. That means bringing in guest speakers. That means helping out schools with, in many, many different ways, mentors, tutors, any way that they can help. They want to help the schools within the village of Estero, and very similar, the schools that are around that area. We're then going to seek out the assistance of the city of Bonita Springs, city of Cape Coral, Fort Myers, Alva, the Lehigh, and try to do the same thing with them. And we think that in doing those and building those partnerships, in the end, we all have the best interests of students in mind. So we really are looking forward to starting with the village, but building from there and doing it across of our fine county. All right. So with that, talking about increasing the retention of our highly effective employees. Okay, recruitment and retention. One of the things, and we're going to show you this video in just a minute, but we're currently involved in a national teacher shortage. And it really, when you're the fastest growing city and fastest growing area in the country, it becomes an acute problem here. Because we hire, I've probably told you this, up to 800 teachers, just about 800 teachers every single year. Back in 2005 when I started looking at this data, it was about 500 a year, and it's grown now to 800 teachers every single year. So that makes it very difficult for us to keep up when you got University of, if you got FSW and Florida Gulf Coast University producing about 150 to 200 teachers, and we're trying to hire 800. When Collier County is trying to hire 300, it makes it very, very difficult. But our teacher retention rate is now up to 88%, which is an increase, and HR is working very, very hard. They are recruiting around the country. But when you go into the classrooms and see the care and the commitment and the passion of teachers, you see the impact that they have on our kids every single day. So we've picked this one. It's also, if you want to share it, it's on our website. But this is an example of what a teacher was willing to do for one of his students.
Today is a day Sunshine Elementary third grader Dulce James will never forget. She just got the surprise of her life.
I feel happy, excited.
Dulce was born with a rare condition. Her left arm ends just past the elbow.
Sometimes I feel bad because, I wish that she could be able to do, the things that other kids do. That she also tells me, I wish I could do this, I wish I could do that.
I've known Dose for 4 years now, so she's been in kindergarten. She's a wonderful student. She's one that students look up to and run through the chambers.
Eric Demery is Dulce's science lab teacher. He recently started a 3D printing club at the school. That's where he got an idea.
We were coming up with ideas of how we could help other students or even the teachers here at school. And then one day it just hit me that maybe I could print an arm for Dose.
Demery spent weeks researching, then put in nearly 40 hours of work during spring break.
10 hours into the print, I was having failures, and I'm thinking I'm not going to be able to get this done before spring break is over.
But he did, and we were there for the surprise.
You can go ahead and open it and show it to the class. So I made this for you, and we're going to try and test fit it for you today. How does it feel? Good? Yeah? Try and pick up the bag, see if that works.
time.
I never expected to see my daughter grab anything, and it was just so many feelings inside of me. I can't say thank you enough for something like this.
It's a good feeling. It's a good feeling. Oh, you gonna be taking pictures now?
With a new outlook on life, Dulce is now ready to face the world with 2 hands instead of 1. For Lee Schools TV, I'm Adam Rick.
So pretty cool. Stay tuned because of the reporting on that, it got some further attention, and so we think that she may wind up with even more advanced technology for her arm. So we're staying tuned, and so just a teacher who cared and decided to try to do something for one of his students, is changing that kid's life, and so that's just one of many examples. I don't know if you saw the little heart he was holding, but one of the things that's cool about 3D printing, you can build these learning, just these things that you can use for learning. That heart he can use to demonstrate for his students, really how the heart pumps blood, because it actually will pump. That thing actually pumps blood, believe it or not. So the latest technology is available in some of these classrooms, and I think it's really relevant for our kids and important. But anyway, just another example of how wonderful some of our teachers are. All right, we've talked a little bit about this. We are doing a lot to reduce costs. We've done a lot to reduce energy consumption. We've used to be one of the largest consumers of energy in the state of Florida. We were spending about $1.37 a square foot. Now we're down to $1.15 a square foot in terms of energy conservation or consumption, and we're trying to drop that down to $1. So that has actually resulted in us saving millions of dollars for the school district, actually in cost avoidance, $38 million since 2010 when we started that initiative. We also have refinanced bonds. The COPS when we build schools, that saved us about $27 million. Unfortunately, that tax reform that just took place, one of the things that you don't hear much about it is that we're now no longer able to do that, because when tax reform went into place, they stopped our ability to refinance our debt. So now we can't take advantage of that anymore. We did take advantage of it up to that point in the last 5 years. It saved us $27 million for Lee County, which we can put back into our district. Transportation has reduced its cost by $1.7 million just in the first semester alone. And by taking on more of our own maintenance, we've saved the district $757,000 in outside contracting costs. We also generate revenue in our school district, which is very unique. We sell some of our used technology. We have a refurbishment program for our technologies, and we'll resell the computers. We resell old buses. That brings in about $695,000 thus far. We have also rented space, cell tower space, and also our facilities for a little over $500,000. And for naming rights, and Denise is a big part of this, $114,000 in naming rights, with more coming. And Bonita Bay, just by itself, came up with $160,000 for Bonita Springs High School for naming rights, $18,000 on our web for web advertising. So we're actually trying to raise revenue to take care of our capital needs. And speaking of capital needs and what they do for us, Bonita Springs High School, and I just want to give you a little bit of update where we are to just, this was taken a little over, probably about 3 weeks ago. So it's even more than what we see here. So then if you, you know, one of the things that you do when you go down 75 is, well, you know, keep your eye on the road, but glance over there to the right. And it's really a fantastic facility. You're going to see something that's really state-of-the-art when we get this thing opened. They just sent me some slides of the inside of the building, which I don't think we included in this. But the inside of the building, I mean, just looks fantastic right now. And just to give you a little bit of a construction update, here are some really cool things. And I know Mark, he's going to be instant fact check for me here. So if I say anything wrong, he's the guy responsible for this project, and he's doing an absolute awesome job. And let me just give you some examples of how awesome. We looked at some recent construction projects, things that have just happened in the state of Florida. Lemon Bay High School was just opened up 2016. So 2016, now get this. Lemon Bay High School, Charlotte County, one county up, just opened up. Per student station, if you look at per student station cost at that high school versus what they're doing at Bonita Springs, if you just look at construction costs, $12,000 more than what they're building this high school, $12,000. And if you factor in now, they say, well, Greg, they had the land, you guys didn't. You had to buy that land. Boy, that was an expensive piece of property. Okay, factor that in, and it's still, what, $6,000? We're still $6,000 cheaper than Lemon Bay High School. Now you go down south to our neighbors in the south, Collier County. Let me tell you, they built some expensive schools down there. This is going to be way cheaper than any of those buildings. In their district office, they call that the Taj Mahal because it's really built. Okay, now they got more dollars down there. They can do those type of things, but we're giving taxpayers of Lee County a fantastic facility, and we're doing it at a price that is well below what you find in this area. In fact, he looked around. If you look at just now I'm going to talk pure construction costs, what it costs just to build the building. So we looked around the state of Florida. The high water mark was about $36,600 per student station. The low was approximately $30,000 per student station. It looks like we're going to come in about $34,000 to $35,000 per student station. So right in the middle of the state of Florida right now. So, you know, you hear all this stuff about the overblown budget, blah, blah, blah. We've told people again and again that this was the original construction estimate was incorrect. That's what we brought to the board. It was a wrong number. When it came to my attention, we brought it to the school board and we corrected that. And we've also, I think personally, that is making a huge difference for us moving forward. We have 10 projects that we're doing in the next 5 years, and now these projects are going to be done, I think, much more effectively than they've ever been done in the past. So hats off to him and his team for what they do. And if you get an opportunity to take a look into that high school, please do so. It's fantastic. Now we're looking ahead into the future. We've got graduation coming up this weekend. That is really fantastic. I get to participate in a number of those, as does Ms. Fisher. And this is just one of those experiences. I love watching kids when they get up there and speak. They do such a better job than I do, you know, but they get up there and so much eloquently give those graduation speeches, and it's just neat to shake all those hands. You have to wash your hands afterwards, but you think about 400 to 500 of those some sweaty high schoolers. But it's neat to see. It's neat to see the look in their eyes as they walk across that stage. You know, they're just happy at their accomplishment. But 2020 is almost here, so we have to, the school board has said, look, Greg, this 2020 plan, that's great, but we got to start looking beyond 2020. So envisioning beyond 2020, look at the graduates in terms of, you know, thinking about our kindergartners now and what we need them to be, where we need them to be when they are graduating from us, and just sooner than you can believe. So, in order to ensure success for our students, we need, of course, a high-quality team of fantastic teachers. That's going to be critically important. We need to improve family and community engagement, and we need to have that commitment to continuous improvement, which I've talked about. So let's talk about some of the key strategic initiatives. I've talked to you about safety and security, and I think you're going to hear much more about it in the upcoming year. I've already talked about school resource officers, but we're also going to see hardening in our buildings. You're going to see more training for our staffs, and you're also going to see more in the way of different drills, and then a real focus on student and staff mental health. So we have, you know, I was out at Fort Myers Middle Academy, and Lynn Edward, the teacher there, or the principal there, has put together a team of experts that focus on students that are struggling with mental health issues, particularly when you talk about stress. They come from high poverty environments. Some of the kids that come in that building have been witness to violent crimes and violence in their communities, and they come to school with a lot of stress and anxiety. But you've got staff there that are trained to deal with that and make sure that they can be very successful. But this is something we need to have more of. We need to increase opportunities for student learning, you know, and align our instructional practices with grading. We have to give students more of an opportunity to learn if they need, so continue to extend our day as needed for some of our students, and also extend our year as needed. We have a fantastic program, the Support Our Students program, that's happening at Dunbar Community School this year that we're going to continue. It's highly successful. We want to do more of that as we move forward. Increasing those student community partnerships, and of course preparing for future growth with our comprehensive growth plan, and also student assignment proximity plan. You'll hear more about that coming up. We'll bring that to you all, and I think you're going to have a little bit tonight. But moving forward, we are looking at a proximity plan that is going to lower our ride times on our buses, increase our average bus occupancy, so shorten those rides at the elementary level while still preserving an element of school choice. So parents, instead of 17 options that you have in some of our zones and 14 options in others, you'll have more like 5 or 6 options, but there'll be high quality options. And your student won't have as long as a bus ride. Now that's something that will be phased in starting at the elementary level. Robert Cody, the Executive Director of Operations, is predicting up to $12 million, but that's not something we're going to get next year. That's going to be something that we will get over a phased-in period of time. So those are just some of the few things that we can look forward to. That is the end of this presentation. And sorry, I usually don't like to read things, but I had so much stuff that I wanted to share with you all, including some of the student information that I felt was very, very important. So I just want to thank you for your attention. And just want to know if there are any questions that you might have. So that means I lulled him to into a slumber. Thank you very much.
Okay, we've added something to the agenda. We have revised it. We're going to hear from the student assignment people. They have an update, and I think something they want to bring to us for a vote.
To see you. We wanted to come to you tonight to talk to you just a little bit about the student assignment plan and some possible changes that we would like to bring forward to you because of the mobility of our students. First, I'm going to let Mr. Mora talk to you for just a minute about the 2018-19 plan that is already approved.
Good evening, members. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight, and thank you, Soretta. Just want to review with you some of the changes that we've made over the years in regards to the student assignment plan. As you know, it's a school board rule to provide DAC input and review of the plan changes every year that we do annually. So I want to bring you back to 2014-15. Some of you might have been on the DAC at that particular time. One of the changes that we made was targeting some issues we found in student mobility, particularly at our low-performing schools. So as a change in the plan, we wanted to limit that mobility district-wide, and we targeted high schools at the onset. And the change, just to summarize it, was restricting in-zone transfers for all high school students to the end of the first semester. So we would not permit, unless there was a hardship or a move to another zone, any student at the high school level to switch schools between the had to be at the end of the semester or between the two semesters. We did permit hardship waivers, as I mentioned before. We further restricted juniors from transferring after the first semester of their junior year. So once they've reached the first semester or completed the first semester of their junior year, we did not allow them to transfer again unless there was a hardship or they moved. Now, in zone means they did not move. They still live within the east or south or west zone. We wouldn't let them transfer to another school within the zone that they lived in. So you might be asking, what were we trying to accomplish? Of course, reducing mobility. And if you look at the research, mobility has a lot of negative impact on student learning. Not only does it impact the learning of the school, it also is disruptive to both the classroom and the teacher. It also has adverse effects on master scheduling, and it also implicates the loss of instructional materials. Particularly now, we give the one-on-one device. We've lost a lot of those as well. So we sought to change the plan in order to mitigate some of these issues. So in 2015 and 16, we implemented that change in the plan and it went into effect. And I just wanted to share with you some of the results in just 2 years after implementation that we've realized. In the East Zone, the year prior to implementation, we had a 27.8% mobility rate at the high school level. In the last year we collected data, which was last school year, we dropped that down to a 24.2% mobility rate. So we realized a significant decrease in mobility. Similarly, in the West Zone, we had 2014-15 mobility rate of 24.4%. Last year, we saw a 20.9% mobility rate. So in both those zones, we had significant drops in mobility. The South Zone had a slightly less drop. Now, we were targeting low-performing schools. So we took a look at 2 schools in particular. Dunbar High School in 2014-15 had a 48% mobility rate. Last year, it dropped to 32%. So when you start looking at the low-performing schools, it had an even greater impact. At East Lee County High School, it went from 46% to 37%. So we saw some positive outcomes to the change that we made in the plan that year. And just to throw a little bit of research at you, and I'm sure that Soretta will share some with you as well, we all know that mobility has a negative effect. As a matter of fact, it results in lower school engagement, poorer grades in reading, particularly math, and a higher risk for dropout. The research will also show you that students generally lose about 3 months of reading and math learning gains each time they switch schools. So that's really the crux of why we made the change. And Soretta is going to share with you a proposal moving forward for next year.
To follow up on the research, some research has been done by Dr. John Hattie along with the Visible Learning Research Lab, and they identified the 250 most things that had the biggest impact on student achievement. When you think about that, that impact can be a positive or it can be a negative. Mobility of students has a negative 0.34 impact on student achievement, while an interactive, cohesive classroom has a 0.44 positive impact on student achievement. So you can see how the opposite effects there. Also, there's been a lot of research over the last few years, and along with looking at the mobility of students and the impact it has. The University of Chicago, which we use a lot of their research when we're talking about the DA schools, but the University of Chicago has done research and they've gathered the biggest key issues to poor student achievement. The number one is mobility, and along with the mobility comes student absenteeism. When the students don't feel comfortable in their school setting, they tend to find excuses for not coming to school. Mrs. Fisher talked about the psychological study or doing some kind of survey with students. That's something else that pops up, the social inadequacies of students and the needing of psychological difficulties. We also see students having more behavior issues because that's the only way that they know to get attention. We also see grade retention. As Mr. Morris said, students drop out, and those students are at risk of failure. So when we talk about student mobility, we really want to look, we've had success at our high school level, but we'd like to look at our middle school level. We know our proximity plan will be coming forward, hopefully next school year, with our elementary schools being addressed. But what can we do this year to have a positive impact on the middle schools? One of the things that we do not want to touch is that first 15 days of school. Students have waivers in, they make requests, they make changes, and that's that time to build those relationships at the school. So that will remain in effect as it is with the high school right now. But when we look at the middle school, when we have schools that have 100+ different changes in student assignment or enrollment during the school year, or they're looking at an average of 20 to 40% mobility, as Mr. Moore talked about, that's at our middle school level too. What can we do to make a change? We've had success by limiting the transfer of students, except at the 3 weeks prior to the change of the semester. They can fill out their applications, and that's what we would like to propose to DAC for your support and input as to something we can do to help the middle schools for this upcoming school year. Do you have any questions?
So the studies coming out of Chicago, how do they define mobility? And those
Students that change schools more than 2 times, and it's not related to moving of homes.
So they're identifying that as moving more than twice. So I haven't looked at the school assignment plan in more than haven't looked at the school assignment plan, student assignment plan, in over half a decade. One of the things that I noticed was kind of a thread in there at the time, probably back in the early, well, about 2010 or so, was the concept of not having social isolation for the students in a school, so that we wanted to have diversity of student body. And how does changes in the plan moving forward make sure that we're kind of moving toward, because it looks to me like in each one of the subzones, we've got a middle school that year after year after year is a low performer. And I think diversity at those locations is really critical, so those schools can become on par with at least the mid-performing schools in those zones.
I'm going to use my whole 1 week of experience in student assignment right now to answer that the best I can, but if any of my friends want to volunteer to step in, I'll let them do that also. Well, first I'm going to tell you that while we do have some schools that are not performing at the same level as all of our schools, we also heard Dr. Atkins talking about has declined significantly over the past few years. So while we don't have schools all performing at the exact same level, because they do have diverse environments and students live in multiple areas that come to those schools, we are making huge improvements. So with that, I think the diversity is going to continue because we are a melting pot here in Fort Myers. We have so many students from everywhere joining our schools. I hope I answered your question. I'm not sure that I did.
12, now it's 5. I'm really hoping that we're going to see a 0 number this year. We haven't got the results yet, but I am confident, looking at the numbers, that some of the ones that were in DA status are going to come out of DA status. If we're able to do that, then you're going to have a high-quality school regardless of what your address is within our school district. In addition to that, you know, the high-quality turnaround principal attracts high-quality staff to his or her facility, and as a result, you're going to see those student assignment gains take place. The other piece that we've got the operations team and the academic services team working on is how do we, because this is the million-dollar question, how do we improve diversity of our student population within our individual schools? I happen to be a principal at Paul Lawrence Dunbar Middle School a number of years ago. We had a very, very diverse student population, but we, despite the challenges you might think were there, we were actually the highest performing middle school in the district. And that was also a school that closed the achievement gap faster than any other middle school in the district. Why? Great teachers. And great teachers, and in a very, very involved parent group, really diversified that school, and also, I think, led to high academic achievement in that school. Having said that, that would be the type of goal that we would have for all of our schools. So one of the things that the student assignment team continues to work on as they look toward making recommendations for the student assignment plan is how do we put systems in place that allow for that to happen. Part of that would be through attractors, but the other part of it is looking at achievement levels and making sure that we are able to diversify student populations within subzones using achievement levels so that you can actually spread that out so you don't have an overabundance of level 1 students, let's say, in one particular school. Because when you look at some of those underperforming schools that we've seen in years past, you look at a larger percentage of level 1 students and also students that come in with challenges concentrated in these buildings versus other places within the subzone. So we have to work within our assignment process to make sure that we're able to mitigate some of that. And that's something that the team continues to work on, and as they do, then they will bring that out to, of course, EDAC and also this group as well, DAC.
Scott Hertz from Gulf Middle. How does this impact families and students that don't get their first choice? I mean, you know, like the story that I've heard recently and from a lot of folks is you have to really think about what your first choice is, because if you don't get your first choice, the odds of getting your second or third choice appear to be very low. You've got to pick the right first choice, or you could end up with your sixth or seventh choice. And so I think some of that is what's driving people's desires to transfer. And is there any component to looking at what were their choices and what school were they trying to get into to start with, for whatever reasons those were, and how do they get there? Because people that end up with their sixth or seventh choice are going to keep trying through the entire semester until there's a seat open in the place that they wanted to start at. And I would suspect, I don't have the data, but I would suspect that's what's driving some of the mobility you see, is people trying to get in a place that they wanted to be to start with.
Try this one. So we'll give this a shot again. With your question, first I will tell you the waiver process is used a lot by parents. I have read so many waivers and communicated with parents over this past week that to talk to them about really what the process is that they go through, they put a lot of thought into it. But again, you make a great point with yourself. You make a great point with what you said, because parents are spending time throughout the entire semester trying to move their student. So the student's never feeling at home where they're at. What we would like to do is leave the student assignment plan as is. You can still submit a waiver, which we review during the summer. You have the first 15 days of school, but then we need to settle down and get to what we're here for, the education of those children. Last year, with the passage of House Bill 7069, we had to implement the early warning system. One of the key parts that was required in the early warning system was to look at student attendance, their course failures, their mobility, and their level of that they were scoring on FSA. Those are indicators that determine whether that student is at risk. So that in itself is one of the reasons that we're wanting to look at the mobility and beginning with the secondary level at the middle school, because those students are going to be our high school students, and then they're going to be at risk for not graduating.
And I just, again, want to add a couple things. One of the reasons that Soretta comes into this position with a great deal of experience and expertise in the area of student programs, ESE and intervention services, so she understands needs of students. And one of the things that we have seen as a disconnect in student assignment is making sure that parents have the proper amount of, really have good information upon which to base their decision when they're making a school selection in the first place. Part of that is making sure that we have a really good match in terms of the student need and also the programs that are available at particular schools. You haven't had the same level of expertise in that arena until Soretta's assignment in that area, because she comes from academic services with that type of background. In addition to that, one of her charges is to improve the customer service component of the student assignment, which is working to get to what those needs are and really being able to explain well what a parent's options are when they make selections. One of the things that we could avoid, I think, a lot of these issues with waiting lists and not getting, the second, third, and fourth choice is if parents understand the first choice to begin with. We had one that we just dealt with. The parent came to a board meeting, and expressed a concern. We were able to get that easily taken care of because of proximity issues and program issues and where the parent wanted to go through a hardship waiver process. But we could have done a better job on the front end with the parent and avoided that whole thing from even occurring. And I believe that, and as do others, I know Mr. Mora has spent time in there. Greg Blurton, who was recently the director, has spent a lot of time in student assignment. He was the director of planning, growth, and capacity. And Dr. Creel, who has also agreed to take student assignment into academic services, because it should be about student engagement and student program. It's not student assignment. We should focus really on the needs of the student when making that assignment, and parents can do that when they really fully understand the options that they have available. So I'm really looking forward to the changes moving forward, because I think you're going to see more of a customer focus, and you're also going to see a better match in the beginning, which avoids problems long term. The last thing I want to leave you with is that I really have found that the waiver process does work very well when there's truly a hardship waiver. And that can be a lot of things, like where the parents work. If you're wanting to drop the student off, you work very near where that school is. It can even be something like I've seen, like student athletes who, this student is a swimmer. She participates in, with a swim team that works out of FGCU, and the student got assigned to, Cypress Lake High School, whereas Estero is only, a short distance from her home and also a short distance from where she practices. So those are things that you might not think of as a waiver, but it's really a desire on the part of our school district to want to work with parents so we can make a really good match and for the success of that particular those particular students. So in the case I just spoke about, I know personally, and because of some of those changes, the kid is graduating this year and is wound up with actually a track and cross-country scholarship because and also academically did extremely well. But that's just one of many, many examples of where we've been able to work with parents, and it has resulted in a huge success for that kid.
Dr. Atkins, just a few pieces of data around Mr. Hurt's question. In the most recent lottery, 2018-19, about 85% of the students received their first choice school assignment. Another piece of data that we've uncovered as we're starting to look at the proximity assignment system is only 47% of our parents pick their proximity school, the school closest to them. And that is in the lottery the preference that you have the greatest weight. So we're looking at all of those things as we start to look to update the plan. All of this data is uncovered, and there's a lot of things we still need to discover as we move forward.
Hold on. The microphone. And state what school you're from.
I think these microphones discourage people from commenting, but I'd like to say that I'm a little confused here if this is already in place for the upcoming school year or if this is proposed.
The high school part is already in place, as
That I
Mr. Morris
understand.
said.
I'm talking about the middle school.
Middle school is not in place as of yet.
And also, I would be interested in hearing from some of the parents of the high schoolers who were unable to move their students and how they feel about the program. I feel like I can see how it benefits the district, but I have some real concerns about the effect of the families not being allowed to move.
Okay, any more questions?
Just a quick follow-up. Was it implemented that every student now does have a proximity preference for a school? We had the one point where there's the 2 miles and the 5 miles, and there were some people that didn't have a proximity school. Is that part of the current plan?
Yes, that is correct. That change was implemented, I believe, 2 years ago. We had roughly 3,500 students that did not live within 5 miles of a school. So we thought it was fair that they were also provided a proximity preference to the closest school to their residence.
The reason we need you to be on the microphones, I'll just remind everyone, is this is a recorded meeting. It's on YouTube and it's live. So in order, so everyone, in order for everyone to hear the questions, we need to talk into the mic.
With the data you just presented, though, you did mention that with absenteeism, if a child is not comfortable at their school and then is not attending school, so it seems to me that not being able to switch is, I mean, I understand you don't want children going back and forth, and I'm really not sure, like when you mentioned Dunbar, were you saying were the people leaving Dunbar or going into Dunbar? Because you mentioned Dunbar specifically and about the rate and how it's decreased, but I was confused. Is that children leaving Dunbar or going into Dunbar? You know,
mobility is the students leaving the school. So they had a 48% mobility rate in 2014-15, and last school year it dropped to 32%. So
okay, so the mobility is them leaving the school. Mm-hmm. Now, the school's having children entering during the school year. Is there a rate? What's that called? Does that have a name, or?
Well, sometimes that's not something we can control. A lot of those are new enrollees to the school district that are assigned to the school. So the mobility that we're measuring are the students that transfer from their school to another school in their zone during the school year.
Okay. Well, because I would think that the schools that are getting these new students throughout the school year, that's also very
disruptive.
Disruptive.
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
So that's why I wasn't sure when you're talking about mobility, are we talking about them leaving, or coming, both? I wasn't sure. But then you had also mentioned the children not attending school because they're not comfortable where they are. So making this stricter for them to be able to move to maybe a school where they would be more comfortable and be able to learn and strive, that kind of goes against what you just said.
I think it depends on the underlying cause why they're not attending, first off. If it's something at the school that is preventing them from attending, if it's a transportation issue, their parents can't get them to school, if they're just fearful about going to school, we do have the waiver system, as it was mentioned, and quite a few of our waivers are in respect to that. So that there is a mechanism inside of student assignment plan to address those particular issues when there is a serious concern.
Okay. All right, not just, oh, my friend goes there, now I want to go there.
Correct.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right, thank you.
And that's what our early warning system is trying to track, to see the students with the poor attendance and what else is impacting those students, so that we can reach out to them and provide that mental health support.
I'd like to hear a little bit about your vision, how you're planning to use technology to, I guess, maybe make the process simpler, maybe to inform the parents, to get them to choose the right school up front. What are your thoughts around, you know, a phone app, website? What's kind of going to happen in the next couple of years on that?
I have a lot of thoughts, but again, I'll reference my whole week of being in student assignment. So if you'll allow me to come back to DAC in the fall, maybe I can give you a better update.
Soretta, I can share a little bit about the things that we have in prototype. We have been leveraging the GIS system to graphically map where students live, but we're also using that system in order to make the assignment process a bit easier as well. We've already implemented Find My School app, which is a GIS-based system where a parent can simply go on to the online system during open enrollment, type in their address, and they will get the schools listed that are available to them. It provides them a link to the school's webpage and also provides them a little snapshot of data in regards to the school. So we're trying to make it easier for the parents to understand what options they have. We've also looked at creating a portal using a GIS as a platform in which parents will actually set their preferences. I want an art school. I want a uniform school. I want bus. I don't want to parent pick. I don't want my kid to walk. So they go through a set of criteria that they set, and when they search, they'll find the schools that match the criteria that they specified. So we don't want to lead them to a school to pick, but we do want to provide them the information that's important for them to make the decision. Again, it's in prototype.
Okay, so there's more questions.
As a parent, it sounded like you listed a whole bunch of reasons that someone would want to transfer. My kid's little, so, and as a kid, when I was in school who did have to transfer more than 3 times when I changed a district one time, it wasn't this district, you listed a whole bunch of reasons that someone would leave a school. And then you told me that you restricted them leaving the school, and then you said your percentage for leaving the schools went down. Of course it went down. You restricted them leaving the schools. So you didn't tell me all of the ways that you fixed the other things, other reasons that they would leave the schools, the isolation and the bullies and the problems in the schools. You just told them they couldn't leave anymore. And that seems like the problem. So I would like to hear those fixes, not you just can't leave anymore.
I'll let Soretta address some of the student service related issues that you brought up there. I would say that this policy doesn't say that they cannot leave. What it says is they can't transfer until the end of a semester. The other part of it is at the high school level, and particularly when you look at juniors that are transferring after their first semester, we found that quite a few of them were lacking their credits to graduate altogether. And it just exacerbated it if you allowed them to transfer and weren't able to pick up the credits to graduate. So that's some of the rationale at the high school level. I'll let Soretta address some of those other student-related issues that you discussed.
So we have spent a lot of funds and a lot of time making sure that we provide wraparound services at our schools. We want to make sure our schools have school nurses. We want to make sure that social worker is there, that school counselor is there. I see Ms. Fisher smiling on the front row, but that school counselor is there because we need to reach out to those students. We're including more school psychologists with our mental health this year because those students need to be doing counseling along with the testing. There's more to being a school psychologist than just a tester. So we've got to really incorporate those things, because you're right. We have to look at what's really wrong with that child. You heard Dr. Atkins talk about changes in leadership. When you change some leaderships at some schools, then those teachers come with those, and you have a more caring environment. We've got to make students feel welcome at school and build those relationships. Do we have areas we can improve? We definitely do. But we've got to keep the students there as much as possible to allow that to happen.
And if I could just bring up something that I heard, I am also on the Equity and Diversity Committee. I heard this talk on Monday, and there were some good questions asked. And we are one of the few school districts that you can even transfer because of our student assignment. Most of the school districts, you go to the assigned school for where you live, and that's where you go. So we are even privileged to have the ability to transfer because of student assignment. And I know that was brought up in my Equity and Diversity meeting.
You talk about mobility rates. I was wondering if you can tell me what some comparable rates are in some of the districts in the area, and your goal. Everyone would like it 0, I understand that, but realistically, what are we shooting for?
That's a great question. We had that same question asked of us on Monday at the EDAC. It's really difficult to compare our district to other districts because of our student assignment plan, because of the flexibility it allows for students to transfer. So, you know, naturally we'll have a higher mobility rate because we allow that as an option. As it was mentioned previously, there's a lot of districts that you can't do that. So we find it very difficult to find an orange to orange or apple to apple comparison with other school districts. When you do look at other school districts, a rate in the teens is probably something that's more common in other districts that don't have a student assignment plan. But it all depends on the demographics of the area that you're talking about. Every district is different. They have different programs. It is very hard to find a comparable district to ours to say this is the benchmark and there's where we want to be. What we have done and what we can do is look at some of the higher performing schools in our district and what their mobility rates are. And I'll give you a few examples. Fort Myers High's mobility rate, and it's stayed pretty steady over the last 3 years, hovers around 10 to 11%. Cape Coral's is around 16%. North Fort Myers is in the low teens as well. So if we start looking around at some of our higher performing schools under the same student assignment plan, those really are the benchmarks we want to look at. They're known factors. They're working under the same variables as every other school in this district. So we'd like to have that more equitable across our district.
Okay.
Omar, that'll be it.
Absolutely. There are a lot of variables at play.
You did high school, you did middle school, so are we to anticipate that you have elementary on the horizon?
I think with our proximity plan that we hope to roll out for next school year, we hope that that will address any concerns that we have at the elementary level.
Okay, the reason they came and spoke to us tonight is they need to take this back to the board. They want to make a recommendation to the board. They need to get the advisory committee's votes, yay or nay on it. So I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor of the new middle school transfer plan, can you raise your hand? Only if you're a DAC member. And keep them up. It takes a minute to count. Okay, opposed? Okay, we have. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. And abstained. Did you oppose and abstain? Okay, I thought I saw a hand. Okay, so Cassie has the numbers. It has passed with a majority vote, so they will be taking that to the board. Of course, you're welcome to attend that board meeting and voice your opinion there. And I want to thank Soretta and Mark Mora for taking the time out of their evening to come and speak to us. And we will now go to breakout sessions. Okay, welcome back. We're still waiting on the elementary group to come back, and here they come, hopefully. So let's hear first from high school. Oh.
I'm just going to put it down.
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. High school had a really great conversation tonight for the time that we had. Questions were asked about how many SAC meetings should there be, and part of that also was if the calendars are posted ahead of time that they actually coincide. So if there is a DAC meeting, that the SAC meetings could possibly fall afterwards so that there was better communication. There's times where a month to 2 months can fall due to the calendars for information to be given to the schools. There was a discussion regarding school choice and student assignment, and further discussion regarding some information from tonight, but that when parents are going to student assignment, and it might not be during open enrollment time, but if they are a transfer in, that they need to be given more information about the school and about the options available for the programs that they do have. There had been some information given from parents that had moved into the district that they were told by student assignment that that might not be the best choice for their student. So maybe if some information is available as to what is available in a school, what their programs are, that would be more informative to the parents. And then also in regard to transportation presentation, which is normally something that's done each year. This year we didn't have one, but a lot of parents would like to see more information given on that subject. Calendars and the websites for the schools, and could they possibly be updated and current starting off on the school year and going through? If someone could possibly look into that information being current on all the schools. And the question was asked, is there the ability to merge calendars to individual calendars? So import district calendar to the personal calendar, and if they can it be layered?
Thank you. Okay, middle school?
And just real quick while they're doing that, I do know that they are working on an update to the website. So they're moving away from Digital Bell to a new website. And when they do that, I think it'll improve school sites as well.
The middle schools were very fortunate to have the illustrious and knowledgeable Dr. Atkins come to our breakout session, who answered all of the questions that were raised, so there's none to actually bring forward from the session. There was a discussion about how school choice is going to be changing for really more elementary schools, it sounds like, and the goal to homogenize the services that are available from those schools to make your choice of school actually less important and to be easier to go to the closest school to you, because whatever services you're looking for will be or should hopefully be properly provided at that school. And that was some of the issues, and then how that feeds up through the other schools to then focus on middle schools, which was our area. The same type of thing is going to happen, that it'll become, the goal is, as Dr. Atkins said several times in here in our breakout session, by the fact that he's realigned the leadership of the schools to then enable them to attract better teachers and have stronger relationships, that again your choice of schools become less important because your child should have a good experience at whatever school you went to, and our group seemed very satisfied with that information from Dr. Atkins.
Thank you. Elementary?
Dr. Carlin joined us and helped us very much. We still had 2 questions or suggestions. Can we have a more easily explainable student assignment plan or bullets? As an entire room, no one could easily say, oh, well, yes, of course, this is how student assignment works. We had to look it up. And I think we all agree that everyone in the district and everyone in this room should be able to tell any parent, this is how it works, bullet by bullet, pretty easily, or have a little card that says that and hand it to a parent and explain it. And instead we all couldn't do it,
Right.
especially after the changes. And we also had a suggestion that was perhaps a goal question on the form should be incorporated so that an assumption isn't made if you pick your nearest school as proximity and it happens to be, say, an art school, that the assumption is made you want an art school, and then your school is given an art school and it's far away when in fact your goal was proximity. So perhaps just a goal line on the form should be incorporated. And in our room, with regards to student assignment, with elementary, we had a lot of concerns about truancy and the fact that we didn't hear any discussion with regard to mobility with any, we're going to use the word support, for the parenting side of that. How are we going to deal with parenting and the fact that it starts in elementary with truancy, dealing with mobility and truancy? And can we have a district-wide plan dealing, because when they move, they really move, that tracks both the mobility and truancy, and then also support for parenting side of that?
Okay, thank you. Is there any public comment from non-DAC members about non-agenda items? Good of the order?
Good of the order?
You have good of the order?
Okay, for the good of the order.
What'd she say?
No, I say.
You have good of the order?
Yes, I say for the good of the order.
Casey McConnell for the good of the order.
Yes.
You have something?
No, I say the end. It's the end. I say we're done.
Motion to
Motion to move.
Scott has made a motion to adjourn. Seconded. All in favor? All right. Have a good summer.
Oh, we're done. Thank you.